Welcome back to the Winning in Life Without Losing Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Pete. I'm so excited to be with you today. I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment in a couple of areas over the next couple of months. And one of them is I really want to explore the true, honest confessions of each Enneagram number. And so, since I'm the host of this podcast, I figured I would just start with Enneagram 4 because that's what I am. And we'll dive into that in just a second. I just want to have an opportunity for us to get real, raw, honest, vulnerable with each other for a second. Let's really get to the core of what we're actually thinking. But before we dive into my deepest, darkest thoughts, I want to, first of all, thank you for watching and listening. If you're listening to this, please leave a 5-star review. Drop a comment in there about how might have helped you. That really helps the podcast go further and into a bigger audience. If you're watching on YouTube, I would so glad you're here. I would love for you to like, subscribe, ring the bell. All those types of things help as well. And if you ring the bell, then anytime I drop a new post or if I decide to go live, you'll be the first to be notified. Also want to say if you're interested in following me along on Instagram, I do some writing as well that I'll post on Instagram and my website, but you can follow me on Instagram at Dustin Pete. I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and all those places, but Instagram is mostly where I hang out. And then if you want to read some of the content that I'm putting up or subscribe to my newsletter, any of those types of things to get that content that I'm curating each week for you, you can find that at Dustin Peed, P-E-A-D, DustinPeed.com. Now, I think we got all the business out of the way. I cannot wait to dive into this for a lot of reasons. And so what I want to do is I'm going to take each Enneagram number. For myself, I'm just going to speak straight to you. But for the rest of the other 8 Enneagram numbers, one through 9, obviously, I'm going to take 4 because that's who I am. But I'm going to interview people that are other Enneagram numbers. We're going to have them on the show, and we're just going to kind of get their own confessions as well. And we're going to have a really raw and honest conversation about what they really think and how they really view the world. I think the more honest and open and vulnerable we can be with each other, the better off we'll understand each other. And the better we understand each other, the more empathy we can have towards one another. And I think that's something that this world is greatly lacking. So I'm going to dive right in here. As an Enneagram 4, many people look at me like an enigma, like I'm a riddle to be solved. And they rarely know which version of me they're going to get. That's totally fair. For that matter, I rarely know what version of me I'm going to get every single day. That's just my first confession. If I'm honest, I really, really love being an Enneagram 4, specifically an Enneagram 4 wing 3. Now, I don't have time to go into all the stats about or all the education about what wings are. We'll do an episode on that in a future date. Or if you want to stop right now and look up what an Enneagram wing is, you can do that. But I love being a 4 wing 3. They're known in the Enneagram world as the aristocrat, someone who doesn't want to be an aristocrat, right? You hear that name, you hear that title, and you think, wow, that's quite dignified. And so the Enneagram Institute defines type 4s like this. Type 4s are connected with their own rich inner life and are concerned primarily with proving their uniqueness and pursuing the ideal. Threes, though, are self assured, ambitious, and charming, driven by desire to be the best. So, this is what it says about a 4 wing 3. Type 4s are adjacent to type 3s, and therefore they share some of those behavioral tendencies. These are known as type 4s with a 3 wing or a type 4 wing 3. So listen, I believe it's only on the altar of vulnerability, like I said already, that we can begin to understand ourselves and understand others. And because of the, kind of unsolved mystery that Enneagram 4 can be, I thought I would just go ahead and make a list, a confessional, if you will, of what it's like to be me. So the first thing I want to confess is that I love to create. I've been doing this thing since the beginning of the year where I'm creating new content every single week, and I'm releasing content most every single day, whether it's on social media or the blog or the newsletter or the YouTube or podcast or whatever. I love to create. I love to create something from nothing. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's one of the highest amounts of joy that I can get in my life. My second confession is that I desire to be wanted and needed. And you might think, well, that's everybody, right? Maybe. I think the Enneagram fours, me as an Enneagram four, am way more in tune with that desire to be wanted and needed, because those are very strong feelings. And as you'll come to learn, that Enneagram fours are very strong feelers. In fact, most people would say they are the strongest feelers out of all of the Enneagram types. I like to be pursued more than pursuing others. I think this is very stereotypical, very cliche um, of an Enneagram four, that we would much rather be pursued than pursue. But as a wing three, I do often pursue others as well. But if I had my preference, I would much rather be pursued than pursuing others. Again, so far, nothing crazy out of the box. But here's where we start to get a little different. My next confession is that I love my feelings, but I really hate how quickly they can ruin a moment or even a whole day. I love my feelings. And you'll often hear Enneagram fours describe their feelings as a warm, cozy blanket that they get to cuddle up with. It's like their blankie or their favorite stuffed animal. It's theirs. They're the blanket or the stuffed animal is the only one that really understands them, the only one that really brings them comfort. I love my feelings. So the worst thing you can do to an Enneagram four is to ask them to not feel a certain way. Um, where I think we get stuck, a lot of times is understanding that, or misunderstanding our feelings for truth, and that's something that I have to battle all the time. And you'll hear that a little bit more here in just a minute. Another confession is most of the time that I really don't want to be cheered up. Again, I love my feelings. I just want someone who understands what I'm going through, understands my feelings, and won't abandon me because of these really intense emotions. Can be scary and it pushes a lot of people away, but I just want people to understand and don't abandon me because of those feelings. I love being around people. Um, but I can equally wing five. We've talked before on different Enneagram episodes about how you can wing in either direction. Everybody has two wings, right? Just like everybody has two arms, but you tend to have one that's a little bit more stronger. But that doesn't mean you don't use the other arm, right? You have your right-handed or left-handed. Just because you're right-handed doesn't mean you don't use your left hand. You use it often, just not primarily. And so for me, I'm a wing three. That's my primary wing, right? But I can also wing five. And sometimes being around people is a little difficult for me for several days in a row. I kind of need it a little bit every day, but then there's also some times where I really need to intensely retreat back and go, whoa, I just need a minute to myself here so I can recharge and get back out there around people that I love being around people. I almost always feel incomplete, is my next confession, often in more ways than one. This is, again, a very prototypical Enneagram 4 feeling that most Enneagram 4s feel incomplete. They feel flawed at some point, and they're always trying to plug that hole. They're always trying to find that missing puzzle piece of what is missing in their lives. And oftentimes they're really not lacking anything. It's just, again, it's a feeling of lacking things. And so obviously being content is super difficult for me and for Enneagram fours, which leads me to my next one is I envy other people that I wish I could be more like. I do as an Enneagram, or as I wing three, and I want to be successful, and I want to be influenced, and I want to be led by the right people. I do find myself surrounding myself with people that I want to be like, which is really healthy, right? A lot of psychologists will tell you. I even just finished reading James Clear, his book Atomic Habits, and he says one of the best ways to do that is to adopt a new habit is to surround yourself with people who are adopting that, who already embody that habit, because it'll rub off on you. And so I do like to kind of cling to people that I want to be like and that I aspire to be like, because it feeds me in that direction. But I often can envy them when I feel that flawed nature of I can't ever really reach that. reach that level. So envy is a big tension point for me as an Enneagram Four. I also tell myself the most outrageous stories, and if I'm not careful, I can easily begin to believe them. We've talked before about Dr. Brene Brown and how she says that the story that she's believing, the story that she's telling herself right now, is a great tool for us to really combat what's true and what's not true. And then for a four, that's big because we love our feelings and it can get really messy between the two. But I often can tell myself the most outrageous stories because I can let my feelings take over, and because we the stories that we tell ourselves create neural pathways in our brain. If you look at it like a ditch, right, that water runs through. Every time we tell ourselves that story, water runs through it and the ditch gets more defined, and that's what neural pathways do in your brain. So the more you tell yourself something, the more you begin to believe it. And so it's really difficult for me to not tell myself the false stories that are stirred up from my feelings. Here's a big confession drop. I'm incredibly selfish. I'm an incredibly selfish person. Most times, I'm only thinking about myself. I'm only thinking about what others can do for me. I'm only thinking about how I can feel the best way that I can feel, or how I can make the day a success or the moment a success in the terms of feelings. But equally, I feel like I'm extremely empathetic. And most fours will tell you this, that they can walk into a room and immediately feel everyone's feelings. They can feel if the person in the back corner is feeling lonely or sad. They can feel if the person up front is feeling energetic and positive and full of self-confidence. They can feel all those things. And so because they're close feelers, right, they're super connected. We're super connected to our feelings as Enneagram fours. As a four wing three, I must confess that I do need a routine. And in our house, we don't call them routines; we call them rhythms. I'm hardcore on rhythms. I do like to flex a little bit. I think there's life, and there's breath, and there's rest in the flexing. But I've even started with Michael Hyatt's Full Focus Planner. I have it here. If you see me walking around with my little yellow book, that's what that is, and it's full of my goals and my ambitions and all the things that I need to do to stay on task because rhythms matter. But here's the thing: as a creative person, I need those rhythms to change up often. That's one of the things that's super attractive to me about the Full Focus Planner is that it's quarterly. So if I can try something for 3 months and try rhythm for 3 months and go, that's not working for me, then I have the opportunity, I have the freedom and flexibility to change that next month with the next journal. Obviously, I can change it at any time. I can erase things in here, but if I just really want to stick with the plan and kind of see how it works out, um, then I have that option, or I can change it up too. But I love routines. Again, we call them rhythms here in our house. I love a good, healthy rhythm that changes and flexes with seasons. That's really more of my like wing three side, not so much of the Enneagram four side. Um, a tough one for Enneagram fours, for like myself. I feel like I have things to say, but often feel that no one hears me. Now, this is quite ironic, right? Because I'm doing a video and a podcast about the way that I'm feeling and the things that I have to say. And so, if you're watching and listening, it means the world to me. And if you're not, be quite honest, it's devastating to me. And I'm trying not to find my identity in that, but I do feel like I have some things to say, but often no one hears. And again, that's there's confidence in that, but there's also a lot of self-doubt in that. um this is going to come to no surprise, especially in this episode. My next confession is that I thrive on vulnerability. Listen, I just straight up don't like fake people, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But I really, really love people that can be totally open and honest, vulnerable, even if it comes across as harsh. And I might go, "Oh, that kind of hit me," or "Oh, that was a little bit offensive." At the end of the day, I'm going to respect that person in that situation so much more because they were fully vulnerable and open and honest. And like I said earlier, I think that vulnerability leads to empathy, and those are things that we need a whole lot more of in our life. Listen, as you're hearing through this list, you can probably already feel, whoa, this is like a lot to handle. That's my next confession. I can be a lot to handle, but also I think if you ask my closest friends, I can also love like no one else. I love passionately those that I love in my life. I passionately love my wife, my kids, my family members, my close friends that are kind of in my circle and that are in my corner every step of the way. I can love them like no one else can, is what they will often tell me, that I love hard, right? Like I can friend real hard. I can relationship real hard. Sometimes it can be a lot to handle, but there's I think there's a yin yang kind of balance to that too. The last thing I want to confess is probably the biggest thing for fours. If someone asks me, describe a four to me in one word, the one word I'm going to use is authentic. Authenticity is the most important thing to me. I do not like fake. I do not like people that are trying to put on a front just to be, to get something, or to earn something. I believe that authentic, and I'm not saying that you need to be fully open and fully vulnerable. I know I said I love vulnerability. Not saying you need to be fully open and fully vulnerable with everybody, but I do think that you can hold in the things that you need to hold in and still be authentic to yourself, and not trying to be something or someone that you're not. That is the most important thing for me, and that's something that I'm constantly evaluating. I went through a period a few years ago where I was only wearing like all black, because as a creative, that's kind of something that you do, and I was in the creative world and doing a lot of production stuff and things like that, and so I thought I have to be wearing all black, and that's kind of what creative people do. And then I went to a new organization, and every creative person on the staff and team, they were all wearing all black, and I was, all of a sudden, I was no longer authentic for wearing all black, and so I was like, well, I can't have that. So I had to change my whole look up. And I know it sounds completely ridiculous, but I need to be not only authentic, but I need to feel unique as much as possible, because that helps me thrive. I want to read this one more thing from the Enneagram Institute that says that fours with a three wing, which is what I am, want to be both the most unique, which I just talked about, and the best, which sometimes manifests as being overly dramatic or attention seeking. Youch. They have a competitive energy, which I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a competitive person. I really don't like overly competitive people. They kind of get on my nerves a little bit. But I do have that competitive energy that I want to be different, and I want to be the best at certain things. So they have a competitive energy, yet they are able to dial back their quirkiness in order to be socially acceptable. That's a lot. That's a lot of confession here today. But listen, I believe if we can all be more honest with ourselves, we can begin to have more grace, not only for others, but grace for ourselves. I believe that we can start to live freely and not under the weight of shame. Listen, folks, I believe that God has made us, each and every one of us, extremely unique. Not all Enneagram fours are exactly the same. There are some things here. I remember sharing this list a few months ago with another friend of mine who's an Enneagram four, and they were like, there are a lot of things on there that I feel too. There's also a lot of things on there that I don't necessarily feel. Every single person is completely uniquely and beautifully made in the image of God, and so I believe that fully. And so, listen, you're not under the weight of who you are. You're not under the shame of who you are. I think you need to embrace who God has made you to be and learn how to live in that in the most healthy way possible. So I'm just going to ask you this: how can you be more open and honest about yourself today? Have you had a chance to dive into what your Enneagram number is and which one that you most relate to? And if you haven't, I'd love to have a chance to talk to you. There's some other Enneagram coaches that I would direct you to as well that can really do amazing things for you. But I would just ask you, how can you be more open and honest about yourself today? I think that's the thing that the Enneagram 4 in me wants to ask you today, to just contribute that to the world. We need you to be more open and honest about yourself today. I need every Enneagram number in my life just as much as I need to be a 4. Um, and again, it's not my identity. My identity is only found in who God has made me. But I think there's a lot of value in understanding uniquely who you have been made to be. And so I ask you, how can you be more open and honest about yourself today? Thank you so much for listening to my confessions today. I'm going to have every other Enneagram number on over the next couple of months, and we're going to interview them, and we're going to talk about some things, that some of their desires and some of their fears and some of their longings. And hopefully, as you should begin to listen to this series or watch this series on YouTube, then you'll start to understand, you'll start to relate a little more to a certain Enneagram number, and you can kind of dive in and really go, wow, it's not just me that feels this way. I'm not a broken person. I'm not a broken individual, but this is something that has been uniquely embedded into who I am as a human. So thank you again so much for listening. I cannot wait to talk to you next time on the Winning in Life Without Losing Your Mind podcast.